Okay, great.
Okay.
All right, welcome everybody to Housing Court Answers and our very first workshop in this Advocate and Organizer workshop series. Um, I am joined by my coworker Liliana Pena.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am here with Sarah. We are here from Housing Court Answers, and we are very happy to be here. Today, we are doing a workshop focusing on how to use eCourts and Web Civil and NYSCEF, which is the New York State Courts Electronic Filing System.
Right.
So,
So,
what is, oh, sorry, go ahead,
right,
Sarah.
I'm doing this. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the first one that we're going to explain to you is Web Civil Local or eCourts. This website contains cases from all the local civil courts in New York State. So that's housing court. Oh, it's all selected. Oh, there we go. That includes civil court, Supreme Court. These cases, they're available for the public, and Web Civil or eCourts can be used to determine if a court date is scheduled currently. Um, and so you might hear from us both Web Civil, Local, and eCourts. I like using eCourts, it's just shorter. Yeah, but do you want to take the next slide?
Yes. So how to look up a case on Web Civil Local slash eCourts. If you check the chat, I put in the link. I put the link in there so you can have access to it and you can practice with us. You can do this either on your phone or on the computer. So you're going to go to eCourts. That's the link. You're going to select Web Civil Local. This is where you can access any case that you have going on in housing court. All you need is an index number, which you will include in the boxes. We will show you what that looks like. You're going to select your party search. Party search means the person who you're looking for. You're going to put the name in there. And then the certain things you can find on eCourts are like court dates, name of the courtroom, and the name of the judge.
Right. And it's so funny, the system for courtrooms, it's not just room 502 or 604. They're all named with part A, B, C, might also have a different name like small property part. And then you might need to track down the actual room number and floor number somewhere else, just to make it more confusing for people. Yeah. Um, Yeah. So on this slide, so you're going to see when you first look something up on eCourts, you might come across something that looks like this, right? Now, if you um, do an index number search and there is a court date scheduled, right? You will be led to this screen, which shows a kind of a snapshot of the hearing information if one has been scheduled, right? Now, if one hasn't been scheduled in a while, you might not find something. We're going to talk about that on a later slide. But if you look at what you see here, right, it says Kings County, so that's Brooklyn, right? The index number is here, right? It's got 6 digits. 24 is the year the case was filed. KI, that's the county. Um, and then case status. Post disposition means the case was resolved in some kind of way. Maybe people want to open it back up and try to do something more, but at least post disposition makes it real clear. You're not at the very beginning of the case. You're not in the middle. You're not doing a motion. Post disposition means some kind of resolution happened. And then plaintiff, that's usually the landlord. Or if the tenant is suing the landlord, then it would be the tenant. The firm that is the lawyer or law firm that's representing the person who started the case. Defendant is usually the tenant, right? The person who you often hear responded. That's the person who did not start the case, right? And then if that tenant has a law firm or lawyer representing them, it would go in that space. The next space, appearance date, right? That's just showing you the one that's coming up, right? There will be a way to see other court dates, but that's at least the first one that shows up there should be the one that's coming up. And judge name and the courtroom name, so part J. It's usually a letter. Okay. And then if you do need to do a new search or edit the search, because maybe you mistyped in the index number, maybe you need to modify it. So anyway, this is might be the first place you land. And then you want to take the next slide?
Yes. So this is the results page. You'll get something like this. Um, Basically, this is the case detail. So again, it'll just give you in a more concentrated version of what you were looking at before, the courtroom, well, courthouse, index number, case name, classification of the court case. Is it a non-payment case or is it a holdover or whatever
H,
else it could be?
repairs,
HP
harassment.
action
Mhm.
for harassment or repairs, illegal lockouts. It could be any of these things. It'll be stated there. Filing dates. Um, and yeah, it'll just have
Yeah.
all this information here for you.
And also the contact information for any law firm that is involved in the case at this stage.
Correct.
So yeah, that was what you would get to if you clicked on index number. But if you wanted to get more details about the court date itself, you would click on the date that was in that previous screen. You would click on the date itself, and then it would show some more details. So this is more details about a specific court date from February 11th, right? The time. But then we get some more details here. The purpose of this particular hearing is to deal with the motion. We don't know if it was a motion from the landlord, a motion from the tenant side. Was it in order to show cause? But somebody made a request of the court to do something. And this also makes it clear that right here, this court date, it wasn't the very first court date because it would have a different label. It wasn't a trial date because that would have a trial label, right? So this isn't tons of detail, but just a little hint of what the case is about or what that court date is for. And sometimes after the court date happened, you might see what the outcome was. The outcome might have been an adjournment or a new court date. Maybe the outcome was a default because somebody didn't show up. Maybe the outcome is uh, some kind of stipulation of settlement, right? So you might see detail there. It might take a while for it to show up because clerks have to enter all that information manually, right? And then, yeah, again, the judge, the part name, and over here, motion sequence. So uh, there might be many motions in a case. There might not be a whole lot. And here we can see this is the second motion that was made in this case. Okay. And
I wanted
then,
I wanted
oh,
to
sorry,
quickly
go ahead.
say, no, just really quickly, where it says here in this yellow button, excuse me, show all appearances. If you have had more than one court date that you have attended or have had, maybe not attended, but have had, you can get that information here as well, which is really good. You will get it all in a centralized place, all of the court dates in which you have had in your case. I just wanted to point that out there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so you would normally, uh, our very next step as HCA employees would be to click show all appearance because I'd be curious about what happened at the previous court dates, right?
Right.
So I guess
Let
next
me go to the
slide.
next slide. I think we're showing that here.
Yeah.
So, yes, if you see here where it says new part, that usually means the court was treating that as the tenant's first court date. Um, Also, really quickly, the first court date is the only time when you can get an attorney. So keep that in mind as well. Adjourn,
Huge,
yes.
huge
It is the only
opportunity.
time that the courts do intake. It's the only time you can request for right to counsel. They do not take any other day to do this. Unfortunately, it is only on your first court date.
Yeah. And
And
sometimes tenants think, well, can't I just skip it today and come back some other day? Absolutely not. No, you will have missed your your big opportunity.
Yes. And adjourned means that they set up a new court date without fully resolving the case on that day. They'll just give you a whole new court date for you to show up on another day. That's all that means.
Yeah, and you can see, like you see, they put the most recent one at the top and the oldest one at the bottom. And what it looks like here is, maybe the landlord did some kind of motion. Maybe they were trying to get this case moved up or something. And then they got denied by the judge. And then that next court date in December, the court treated that as the real first court date. Um, and maybe the tenant showed up. They got the case adjourned because they showed up and they probably said, I want to talk to a tenant lawyer. Please tell me
Right.
where to go. And then they set up the new court date. And then for all purposes, that's usually what you might see when it's the second, third, fourth court date. And it hasn't got to trial yet. It's just the court's just trying to see, like, can these two sides talk to each other? Let's see what happens. Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes you may get something that looks like this. No court date is scheduled. When you get something like this, no case is found, it just means that there is no court date scheduled at the moment. Sometimes we'll see that tenants have what's called a stipulation agreement, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a court date coming up. It just means you have an agreement coming up where you may have to make a payment or just things like that. Or a landlord has to make repairs, you have to give access. It's not that necessarily you have to come back to court. Sometimes people get those things confused.
All the
So,
time.
yes. So remember when we said eCourts only shows cases if there's a current or a very recent court date. If your client hasn't had a court date in a while, you might see this page when you look up their case. This does not mean that the case or its public record has gone away. It just means that there aren't any upcoming court dates to show. If the tenant or landlord side sets up a new court date, maybe through an order to show cause, then you'll be able to find cases on eCourts again. Again, this is only used when there's an actual court case on file, on record, and that's it. But always give
Yeah.
us a call too if you have issues in looking up your case, because we do this every day. We can easily look up your case on NYSCEF and eCourts just to confirm if you have a court date or not, or maybe again, most likely you just have a stipulation where you just have to make some type of payment on a specific date.
Yeah, that is so, so common for people to have stipulations and any date that they see in that they might assume that it's a court date, but definitely
Right.
not. Yeah, there's also just a lot about stipulations that is not obvious to anybody. And so I would highly recommend that everybody here come to our future workshop on stipulations. That'll
Yes.
be that'll be very, very useful to people. Yeah, so the next website that you are going to be using, hopefully, is called NYSEF, New York State Courts Electronic
Yep.
Filing. Oh yeah, it's written right there. So it's a program that allows people, lawyers, corporations, whatever, to file legal papers electronically. So things don't have to be done on paper, right? And for most tenants and also us advocates, usually we're using it just to look at documents, not to do any filing ourselves, but really just to view documents. And theoretically, all of the court documents from the very beginning to the very end of a case should show up on NYSEF if the case is on NYSEF at all.
Correct.
Um, yeah. Oh, let me see. Um, yeah, so I think we can go to the next slide.
All right. So when you type it out, Sarah, if you want, you can post that link
I'll put it in the chat. Yeah.
for NYSCEF, and you guys can again click on the link once it's in the chat, and we may, I don't know if we have a an example index number that you can try, but anyways, you can go into this website. This is the NYSCEF page. This is what it'll look like. Um, when you go into the NYSCEF page, you're going to search as a guest. That is one of the first things you're going to do. That is how you enter the page and access all that you need to access without having an account. So for non-lawyer advocates, it probably doesn't make sense to try to set up a NYSCEF account, and you definitely can't submit documents to intervene in someone else's case. Unrepresented tenants and landlords can set up a pro se litigant account to e-file documents for their own court case. But the setup process is pretty complicated. Again, if you
Yeah.
just have issues in trying to locate your case file, you want more information on whether you want to know if there is a case under your name or anything like that, we can do that for you as well. So just call us and we can help you with the system, with these portals if you're having any trouble. Go
Yeah.
ahead,
I
Sonia.
mean, just to back you up, like it is so rare to have a situation where it's absolutely necessary to set up a NYSEF account for somebody. And
Yes.
maybe just because it's not obvious, pro se, that's Latin. Lawyers use Latin to make us feel alienated, but we're not going to. Pro
Yes.
se means for yourself, right? And so a pro se litigant is just a person talking for themselves in court, acting for themselves in court without a lawyer doing it for them. Yeah. And yeah, I had set up a NYSEF account for myself, and the process was really complicated. Like you had to print out a form, you know, go get it notarized by somebody, and then there were also mailing requirements and also bringing it into the court itself. Like it doesn't usually save people time. The only time when it might be absolutely necessary is if the person is like out of town for some reason. Some document absolutely has to be filed. But for most people, it's really not going to make sense. Sorry. Okay. Let's see. All right. Is this okay? I guess this one's me. So I just like eCourts, you can look up a case using either the name or the index number, right? Searching using the index number is much more reliable than searching by name because a lot of landlords spell the tenant's name wrong, or the tenant might have an extremely common name like John Smith or Maria Rodriguez, whatever. Um, and sometimes when the landlord spells the client's name or the tenant's name wrong, can also be kind of a wonderful thing because then your name is not showing up in the tenant screening reports. But yeah, because they so often spell the names wrong, if you have an index number, use that, right? Um, so if you can't use the index number because you just don't have it, the tenant lost their papers,
Yeah.
um, then you can try, right? The index number, oh, I guess I should still explain. So when you're putting in the index number, you'll see those different boxes. The first box, you're going to select LT. That stands for landlord tenant. So any housing court case is going to say LT at the front. The next box is 6 digits. They usually, oh, great question, Geraldine. So LT just means housing court. So within housing court, you could have a lot of different types of cases. HP cases is just one type, and that's where a tenant is suing a landlord um, for, repairs or harassment, something like that. But also eviction cases will have LT at the front because they are housing court cases. Illegal lockouts, also LT, right? No, LT is all housing court. HP is just a small subset of the LT cases. Okay. Um, So yeah, that second box, the 6 digits, that is the index number. Most of them nowadays start with three, unless it was started by a small landlord, and then it might start with zero.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's usually 6 digits that go in this box. And then in the next box, that is the year that the case was filed. So a lot of the ones that you see now have either 2-5 or 2-4. But if you see 2-3, 2-2, 2-1, those are older cases, right? Very soon we'll see ones that say 2-6. And then that last box, that is the county. We'll
Hello?
see. Oh, hi. Sorry. Um, all right. Yeah. So searching by name. If you must search by name, okay? If you're getting too oh, right. So if you think that the landlord spelled the
Hello?
name wrong and you're getting no results. Oh, wait, sorry. Uh Glory, were you trying to say something?
No, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
I'll just mute you. Okay. Sorry. Um, okay. Sorry. Oh, I'm just going back to the
Okay.
okay, I'm gonna keep going with this slide. Um, all right. So if you're looking at by name, because you have no choice, um, if you think the landlord might have spelled the name wrong, try using just a few letters of the name, right? So if my name is Sarah, and I think maybe the landlord was just typing sloppily, and maybe instead of putting Sarah, he put Saar or Shar, right? Trying it, try a few different things, but maybe try just using the first letter of the first name. Um, the last names uh are even more likely to be wrong. So maybe just use one or two letter, maybe three. Just try a few different things until you maybe get two. And then if that still doesn't work, another alternative, you could try looking it up using the landlord's official corporate name. Now, you might be scrolling through lots and lots of cases, but that could be another way. Now,
Hmm.
what if you're using the name and the name is just super common? It's John Smith, right? Then in that case, you would need to narrow it down in a few other ways, right? You could narrow it down with selecting the borough, the case type, maybe even the year of filing. And if that still doesn't work because so many John Smiths, then you could look up the landlord's corporate name and then scroll through all of their cases, maybe narrowed down. It might take some work. Uh, We're going to be with you. Looking a case up by the name is super hard. And yeah, and also sometimes the tenant is only listed as John Doe or Jane Doe. And that is so, so common to see John or Jane Doe. And the landlord kind of has to put that. If they never had a formal landlord-tenant relationship with this person, they kind of have to put John Doe or Jane Doe, right? Um, yeah. So yeah, so those things about case type. So yeah, Liliana, you want to take this slide?
Yes. So again, this is the same page. When you're adding your index number at the end, like Sarah was saying, you're going to add the borough that the tenant lives in. So BX will be for the Bronx, HA for Harlem, NY for Manhattan, KI for Kings County, that's Brooklyn, Queens for Queens, RI for Staten Island. Usually, for those tenants living in Manhattan, they get confused because depending on your zip code, your case may have an HA for Harlem or an NY for Manhattan. Sometimes people get those things confused because you're in the same borough. But just keep that in mind. Sometimes it may be an HA for Harlem or an NY for Manhattan, depending on where you live. Um, but yeah, just keep that in mind. Sometimes people can't find their index numbers or their cases, not their index number, their cases, because they may not have that small little bit of information. And just because of that, you'll get someone else. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes in Manhattan, they use HA or NY. That's only in New York for Manhattan.
Yeah.
You want to take
So
this?
on this, yeah. So you might, if no cases are found, you might see something like this. Case search result and just shows nothing, right? And maybe you just type the index. So you could try again, right? Sometimes when every once in a while, NYSEF will actually, if the website is not sure that I put in the right year, sometimes it'll show me the same index number, but the 22 version, the 23 version, the 24 version, just in case I typed in something wrong. Sometimes it's smart like that, but although sometimes you just come up with nothing, right? And you know, if that's the case, it could be a typing issue, but one thing to keep in mind is that small landlords with no lawyer, and landlords who are a person rather than a corporation, so unincorporated landlords, um, they are not automatically registering electronically. They might just be filing some hand filled out worksheets with the court, and those don't go electronic until the landlord takes steps to make that happen, right? So it is possible that in a situation like that, if it's a small landlord who does, is just a person and they don't have a lawyer, the case might not show up on NYSEF. The case should still show up on eCourts though, and that might be a second way. If you're talking to a tenant who received papers, they're freaking out, and then you look on NYSEF, you don't try eCourts too, just to see.
Yeah.
Um, and if not, you can always go to the courthouse to check on these things. And eh, okay, a very rare, weird situation was where a landlord hadn't really filed papers. They had just sort of like photocopied some old papers from another case and put in the tenant's name just to maybe see if the tenant would just move out, even though there was no case. But that is an extremely rare kind of uh kind of situation. I don't know if Liliana, you've ever come across something weird like that.
I've come across where landlords start fake cases. So yes, and these things, no. So what's good about that is that if there's an index number, again, you can just look it up and kind of see is it an actual case or not. As we know, a lot of tenants get harassed. A lot of landlords will create fake notices. So again, it'll all depend officially on that index number and if we can find a case or not. So, but yes, I mean, yes, we've seen it all. We've seen it all. But ultimately, if there isn't an official case on file, then everything is fine. But we will look it up by an index number. An official case will have an index number, and we will corroborate that with NYSEF and also through eCourts, and even triple check by calling the courts ourselves and seeing if there's a case, um, filed again, by the landlord towards this tenant. So there's a lot of ways we can, double check on things and make sure if there's ultimately a case on file or not.
Yeah. Do you want to go to the next slide? Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so on NICEF, um, these images are to sort of show you a little bit more. If you look on the left side of your screen, when you're looking up the case by name, that's what it would actually look like. See, you could look up using the tenant's name. Don't bother with the middle. It'll just get NICEF confused. So I would focus on first and last name. And business organization, that would generally always be the landlord. I mean, I guess if it's a commercial case, we do not get any training on commercial cases. So for that, you would need to go elsewhere. This is all our training is with residential cases. Um, But yeah, if you look a little further down, you could filter a little bit by county, Queens. That's what you see there. County, you would pick the appropriate one. Case type. Now, when you get to landlord and tenant, that's the LT, you will see many different case types. Alleged illegal lockout, um, HP repairs, HP harassment, HP repairs and harassment, non-payment, holdover, nuisance. Sometimes they have extra detail, and I don't know why they need to include that detail. But so you just might see many different options in the landlord tenant section. But you might realize that, or this might actually make obvious to you that when you're trying to filter by case type, you'll see that a lot of different types of case could end up on NYSEF, right? Um, because a lot of this is civil court. Civil court does a lot of things, right? Supreme Court, uh, you might see torts, motor vehicle, matrimonial, uh, family court. Not all things will be accessible, right? So, for example, family court cases are pretty personal, right? Divorce cases might be quite messy. So, you know, some things are going to be easier to see documents from than others. But yeah, NYSEF does have a lot of different types of cases, not just housing court stuff. And the last filter that you can see, that filing start date, filing end date. I don't like to use those that much because sometimes people's recall of when a case started, like if you're just talking to a tenant, when did, when did your landlord start this case against you? They're probably not going to remember in great detail
Yeah.
because these cases might have been going on for a year and it feels like two, or maybe it's been going on for 2 years, but it just has felt really fast. So I don't know. Use that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. You will still get some information generated by the program if you just include some of those things, not all. So something will ultimately come up. Um, so yeah, if you don't have everything, that's okay too. And then right here is just the example of like what the page will look like when you're entering a name, and these are the results, and you just have to sift through it. As you see, it's like it has like page 34, 35, 39. So there's tons of results for whomever, they were looking for here. I think this says Jane Doe. So as we know, that's very common. So you'll get number pages like this when it's something common like that. But yeah.
Yeah. But as much as if you're working with clients or just tenants in general, as much as you can tell them, don't throw out any of your papers, don't lose your papers,
Yes.
it's gonna make everybody's life so much easier, right? And it'll help the tenant feel more ownership over their case if they've got everything together. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to take this one, Liliana?
Yes. So what kind of documents can you see on NYSEF? If it's the first time you're seeing anything about this case, you may want to start with the petition to read what the landlord's claims were when they started the case, and then you can move on from there. The most recent document should appear at the bottom of the list as of recently 2024. Um, it'll be, different years depending on what it is. Marshal's notices must now appear on NYSEF as well. This is important because a tenant could be in terrible position if they didn't know a marshal's notice has been issued because it disappeared somehow or got lost in the mail. So again, we oftentimes get tons of stories where people are not getting their mail, are not getting these notices. Maybe they don't recognize what it is. Sometimes they don't know what these notices are. A lot of people have issues reading, recognizing legal notices, understanding what that is. So we get a lot of situations where people just need assistance, and thank God that again, using these systems, you can look up their cases and look at every single notice that has been filed. Since, again, when landlords have to start these cases or initiate these cases, as Sarah said earlier, you're able to see everything on NYSEF, which is good for us advocates because, again, whether they have these notices or not, we do. We have access to it and we're able to share it with them. Their whole case file. Again, share with them if there is a stipulation or an agreement in place, meaning they should be aware that some type, again, that they have to do something, meaning that if there's no action, they should be receiving some type of marshal's notice soon. So it's important just to relay these types of information or to help people understand what's to come. So it's just good to have access to these things.
Yeah. And I mean, as you can see, there's so many different, we tried to put a list of some of the most common stuff that we'll see on NYSEF. Oh, can you go back to that site?
Yes.
Um, yeah, but there are other types of documents that might show up, things that we didn't even think of. So, um, hopefully all of you will be able to attend more of our workshops that could really dig in, like what goes in a stipulation? What should I be looking at with the marshal's notice? What would it take to do a really great order to show cause, something that really gets the judge to do what we're asking them to do? You know, the more that you learn, the more that you're going to know what to do with this. But if you are working with a tenant and you see a document and you don't really understand what it means, it is always okay to call our hotline. We love talking to tenants and also to advocates. It's beautiful when people are working together like that.
I agree.
Um, yeah, so, this is returning to this idea that we had talked about before. Not all housing court cases appear on NYSEF, right? If you don't find the case on NYSEF, don't just, you know, breathe a sigh of relief and wander off like, oh, I'm cool. No, there could be a reason, like maybe it's a small landlord, maybe it just hasn't appeared on NYSEF yet. You always, like, if you don't find it immediately, you always want to do more research, right? Um, yeah. And yeah, and let's see. I think if a tenant files a case themselves against the landlord, they the court does put those into NYSEF, so it should be able to find it. But you'll usually see a consent document like proceed with as as electronic filing because yeah, the tenants are filling out those papers. It might be a stack of papers.
Yeah.
Um, and then once they hand it into the court, it does get a lot electronically filed. But if a tenant is, let's say a tenant is trying to evict their roommate, very unpleasant type of situation. Yeah, those papers might not show up in NYSEF immediately, right? Um, Also, something to keep in mind. So even if the cases are filed electronically, not all documents are going to be immediately available, right? And if you do an order to show cause one day, it isn't necessarily going to immediately appear on the web on NYSEF like the same hour. It might not show up to the next day or maybe even a couple days after because these all have to be uploaded by human beings and no human being is perfect. And every once in a while you'll see a case where a document is just missing. It doesn't mean that the document isn't inside of the paper file. It's just some human made an error and didn't upload everything. Um, oh, and just another detail that, is not obvious to people is that you might see close to the end of a case, you might see something that says warrant requisition. This is not the same thing as a marshal's notice. It means, so before a marshal's notice um, can be issued, there needs to be a warrant, right? Basically, the court needs to give permission for a marshal to go start doing things, to issue a marshal's notice, and later on to actually carry out an eviction. So there has to be a warrant. And those warrants, they don't get created automatically. It has to be a judge taking a step to issue the warrant. So when you see a warrant request, you'll want to look to the side and just say, does it say processing or does it say processed? Or I think it would say pending or it would say processed. When the warrant requisition says processed, that means the warrant exists. And then because the warrant exists, the landlord, or sorry, the marshal has permission to issue the marshal's notice. Do they always do it on the first day possible? No, right? But if they have the permission, they usually will do it eventually. But the warrant request should have the marshal's contact information. And the marshal contact information, tenants don't always realize that they are allowed to call the marshal, right? If a marshal is involved in your case, you're allowed to call a marshal to get information. Now they don't, if the eviction isn't scheduled immediately, they don't have to tell you the exact day that they're planning to schedule it, but sometimes they do. But absolutely, if an eviction is scheduled to happen today or the next day, maybe the day after that, Liliana, is it the next 2 days?
The what that it's what?
Like when the marshal's office has to disclose the scheduling of the eviction.
Oh, honestly, they disclose it.
Yeah.
They always disclose it. They'll say if it's next day, they'll say, "Oh, we don't have it scheduled for this week. We're gonna do it on such and such date." Or if they don't have anything concrete, they'll say, "Call us back tomorrow, call us back in 2 or 3 days, and we'll let you know when we will be evicting."
Yeah.
So they give different answers, but they usually do tell you when they're going to evict. They have been very good about disclosing when they're going to evict.
Yeah. It's only a couple times that I've noticed them being a little bit cagey about, yeah, it's been a schedule, but I don't want to tell you yet.
Mm,
But definitely if it's um the next 2 days, they have to tell.
yeah. Yeah, thank God. I mean, every time I've called the marshals, it's always been cut and dry. They tell you when it is, or they'll say, call us back. Or if they're not going to schedule on that specific date listed on the marshal's notice, they'll let you know. They'll say, we're not going to evict that day, but we will be evicting on such and such date. So they'll probably give a few days in between. It'll depend on whatever, but
Yeah.
yes, that happens. And they are very specific.
Yeah. And uh any tenant can call about their own case, but it's also okay for us advocates to call. What I usually, when I'm calling, I say, "Hi, I'm calling from Housing Court Answers on behalf of a tenant. I need to find out the status of an eviction." And
Yeah, they will tell
they,
you.
yeah, yeah, okay. So I think that is the end of our slides. So we've got some time for people's
Question.
questions.
Yes.
Um, Yeah, there were a couple things that I had noticed a little bit earlier from the questions. So just to clarify, so LT, it means landlord tenant. So it could be a zillion types of different cases, but if it is a housing court case, technically housing court is landlord tenant court, right?
Hmm.
And it could be most of us are probably involved with the residential landlord tenant relationship, but also commercial tip because sometimes small businesses get evicted too. Um, and the rules for them are very different, right? Um, yeah, residential is the one that we're the most familiar with. So yeah, housing court is technically it's landlord tenant court. Um, yeah, and let's see other questions. Oh, okay, one thing that might have been a little unclear. So we had talked about when access to lawyers happens. So the first court date, that intake court date, where on eCourts it might say uh, new part, that is a tenant's best chance at getting a free lawyer through the Right to Counsel program. And yeah, something that we at Housing Court Answers have noticed is if a tenant just says, I want an adjournment, the court might not think, oh, and we should make sure this tenant gets their screening conversation to see if they qualify for the free lawyer program. So what we usually say at Housing Court, what we usually tell tenants to say when they get to their first court date is not, I want an adjournment. It's, I want the chance at a free lawyer. Please tell me where to go, who I need to talk to, but I want the chance at a free lawyer, like using the word lawyer. Um, and then asking what the process is, because the process is different in every court. But yeah, they should not just say, I want an adjournment, because they'll just look at the calendar and they might not think through that next step. It sucks. It sucks that tenants have to be coached so hard through this. But given that the system is so complicated, we want to make sure everybody has the right information. Let's see.
This is, can you clarify when a tenant can request an abatement in a non-payment case? Abatements usually, yes. Basically, abatements, what an abatement is a reduction in rent, due to uninhabitable conditions. Um, Usually you can request an abatement only through a non-payment case, is what we are told. Um, they do focus on the money first, on what is owed, and then the judge will go through whatever the abatement will be, whatever the tenant will get credit for, however that goes. But you don't need to have a separate HP action case. In your non-payment case, you are asked if you have any violations in your apartment, any issues in your apartment. This is also when you're giving your answer in the beginning of the case. So when you are giving the in the beginning of the case, when the case has initiated, you are to give your answer, you are to state if you have violations in your apartment or not. Once you do this, you are making the courts aware that you have violations. You can also mention the word abatement, um, so that again, at least the courts are aware that you're seeking some type of reduction, you have been going through uninhabitable issues in your apartment, things like that.
Yeah.
But
On the answer form,
yeah,
there's a part at the very bottom where it says counterclaim, because
right.
there's a line for repairs, and then at the bottom with counterclaim is where you might mention abatement for conditions, because like if you don't mention counterclaim, then the judge might just think like you only want a court order to make repairs. They might not get it that you want to talk about, right? But I just also want to mention that we had some, in our training series, we get a lot of lawyers to explain, and abatements for repairs issues is a very frequently requested topic. So we've got a
Yeah.
couple videos from great tenant lawyers who really dig into the process for trying to fight for an abatement in a non-payment case, because it does not work a way that would make all of us the way that we all wish it would, right? Because um, you know, it, like you could bring up your desire for an abatement during the negotiation phase of the case, but then it's negotiated, and the landlord lawyer might not think that the amount you're looking for is fair. And then you're faced with that hard question, do we go to trial over this? And going to trial is a really tough choice because um, yes, it's a chance to show evidence, etc., but doing it as a non-lawyer is really hard. And whatever the judge decides that the tenant owes, they might say it needs to be paid in 8 days. If the tenant does not have all of the back rent, um, that might not be a strategic move for that tenant. which is frustrating because it means the tenants who withheld the rent and have all of it, those people are in the best position to be able to have a knockdown, drag out fight over abatements at trial. And if the tenants just fell behind, they might not be able to get a, they might get really disappointed about their ability to get an abatement, which is frustrating, right? Um, yeah. Also, some people in the legislature are talking about changing some of the processes so tenants can actually sue for abatements themselves. So, if we don't like how the system is, might be worth talking to people who actually shape the way the laws work. Just putting that out there. So can I ask a question? Oh, about adjournments. So yeah, on all the court papers you get, they might say adjournment is 14 days. The very first adjournment, that's just a ballpark figure. And frankly, that number's kind of out of date. And it's the length of an adjournment. You're going to get a very different answer based on which borough you're in, right? So I'm usually in Brooklyn, and the first adjournment is 45 days. Liliana's in Manhattan. They're still doing 45 days for the first adjournment in a case, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. However, in the Bronx, it might be different. In Queens, those first adjournments, they're kind of short. It might be just 14 days. So uh this is just one of those situations where people might be looking for a hard and fast answer. There just isn't one, right? Um, let's see. Okay, in counterclaim section, somebody asked for reimbursement in attorney fees. Yeah, people can make all sorts of requests in the counterclaim section. It's often yeah, it's why it's so great when tenants actually get a chance to talk to a lawyer because they can advise on what does it make sense for you specifically to be asking for.
And
Um,
also, if you are getting sued for let's say in a case for non-payment, make sure you are disclosing to the judge or clarifying when doing your stipulation. Remember, it's an agreement. It's an agreement between both parties. Make sure that you are aware that the landlord's team will try to ask for any and everything that they can. That means legal fees, late fees. You want these things waived if you can get them waived. You just want to concentrate on what you owe, and that's it. Oftentimes the judge will specify no legal fees will be asked for, or whatever the case is. It'll just be like, again, what you owe, and that's it. But yes, landlords will sneak in legal fees, late fees, all these other things. But these are things that you can have conversations about and make sure it's specified in your stipulation, whether or not you are having to pay for these legal fees and late fees.
yeah. I mean, the housing court judges, they care about whether rent is getting paid or not. I mean, especially in a non-payment case, right? Like, what is the true amount of rent owed, right? Do both sides agree about it? And what is the plan for getting that back rent paid, whatever the true amount actually is? Um, and if people are not paying late fees, most housing court judges would say go to small claims to to deal with it. They certainly wouldn't evict over a tenant not paying outside fees. Um, and it's pretty, I mean, Liliana, you would say that it's pretty rare for a judge to say that a tenant has to pay landlord's legal fees. The only situation where that's common is where the tenant has already been evicted and is trying to get back in, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it in tons in different cases. So yes, when a tenant is getting or has already been evicted, like a post evict, yes, I understand you have to they'll add the legal fees, they'll add marshal's fees, all of those things. But before any of that happens, I have seen them try to add legal fees, late fees, but I've also seen where the judge says no, they only pay what they owe and concentrate on the money owed. Um, whether that's on the, I saw a question, even if it's on the lease or not, or something like that. But yes, either or. Once the case is brought to court, again, the judge has a final answer. So I would discuss it. I would negotiate those things. I would speak on that. And then just see what happens at the end.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat said to this is great. Like, suggest to check your lease to see if the landlord is liable for your legal fees, or if they've tried to sneak in a language saying tenant is
Mm,
responsible for landlord's legal fees. Because yeah,
yeah,
but if the landlord didn't include any language like that, then maybe it makes it a little bit easier to try to go
yeah.
after legal fees. I mean, most of the legal aid lawyers are not trying to go for legal fees because in order to get legal fees, you would need to do increments of time for the billing, and they don't usually do that.
Mm,
But yeah, private lawyers, they are billing in 6 minute increments. So if you've hired a private lawyer, which is a very expensive thing to do, um, yeah, might be worth looking into all of this. Definitely,
yeah,
you always want to, no matter what, reading your lease, good idea.
yes. I'm seeing here, how often are tenants asked to pay for legal fees and holdovers? That I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, when I look at, like, when we're helping small landlords to fill out the forms, a lot of the time they say a bunch of things. And just because the landlord's court papers say, oh yes, we're looking, we want the tenant out. We also want a whole bunch of back rent, and we also want legal fees. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to get it, right? Like, if this
Right.
did go to, it doesn't, but it might be a situation where they are doing what, sometimes we tell tenants, like, you receive 0% of the things that you never ask for. So it's people are allowed to ask for many, many things in housing court. It doesn't always mean that they're going to get them, but if you don't ask for something, you guarantee you definitely won't. So yeah, maybe the landlord is just thinking, well, why don't I just ask for everything but the kitchen sink and just see what happens? Um, but yeah, you know, if things are left to the judge, they usually don't say the tenant will have to pay the legal fees. Um,
Mm,
okay. So this got with non-paying tenants who game the system, refusing access to do repairs, even damage apartment call 311 to increase violations and bolster grounds for non-payment. Um, I always hesitate to try to put myself into the mind of another person. Any side in a case can only control their side of things, right? So, sometimes people have legitimate reasons for not wanting to do access dates on the date that the landlord wants to do them. Because, yeah, I mean, access dates, it all do it depends on person's experience. Um, if the accident dates are during the week, sometimes the person can't take the day off work, or sometimes the person has taken days off work for an access date, and then nobody showed up. And tenants get very, very frustrated with that. So it's why if the two sides are in a court case anyway, um, you know, getting the access dates in a stipulation, both sides have agreed to it, and picking the dates and getting real specific about what time people are going to show up. Um, it's kind of the best you can do, right? And then you hope everyone is going to comply. You hope the tenant's going to comply. You hope the landlord's going to comply. But it's not a perfect system, right? So the best most people can do is put out what you want from the start. Try to make it official, get the details on paper in a stipulation, and then see what happens, right? Um,
Yeah.
And can I explain where I'm coming from?
yeah,
Is that okay?
sure.
Oh, okay. So I'm in an HDFC co-op, and I don't know if you know what an HDFC co-op is, formerly foreclosed buildings, and we
Yeah.
tenants organized and bought our buildings way back when. In terrible shape, by the way. No repairs were done when we bought back in the 80s and 90s. And I'm part of the HDFC coalition. I'm on my board, and we're self-managed. 50% of HDFC co-ops are self-managed to save money. And again, we have come across issues with shareholders and or tenants, because some HDFCs have both tenants or shareholders who know the game, and they will do exactly what I just said in my question. They will stop paying their maintenance or their rent. They will actually damage. In my building, a shareholder removed his carbon monoxide detector and his smoke detector, called 311. We were trying to get in to repair. We were willing to go in on weekends, and he would let us in. And then he called the 311, and we got a whole bunch of violations against us that just strengthened his non-payment. And he didn't pay for a year and a half, and we spent $11,000 in legal fees to finally try to get him to pay. So I'm just trying to give, I look, I ran my first rent strike in 1974 in April in the Bronx with Black and Puerto Rican women. So I understand slumlords. I lived under a slumlord's roof in 1974 in the Bronx. So I understand definitely the tenants need protection. But unfortunately, because landlord-tenant court is leaning so heavily towards tenants, which can be a good thing, but for very small landlords or small co-ops like HDFC co-ops, it can be really hellish, and it can really run you into the ground. When you're trying to deal with a shareholder or a tenant who is gaming the system,
Yeah.
and very happy to coast and not pay rent for. I have one HTC we're working with 3.5 years. Tenant hasn't paid rent, 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Because of
So,
COVID,
so
the judges are very, reluctant to
yeah,
evict.
I mean, we don't want to go too because this workshop is mostly about these webs, and I love Q&A sessions, but yeah, we don't want to go too far into the weeds, but yeah, I mean, I guess this is again a situation where it's like you can't control everything that and all you can do is control how you're participating in the process. And yeah, it might be a situation where like trying to do things yourself, like getting a lawyer involved, and yeah, and also
I think I was gonna say yes, getting a lawyer involved and maybe which HDFC sometimes have connected to the building, but working on those bylaws is the most important thing because the bylaws are the rules of the building and of you guys. So it's like I also belong to an HDFC co-op, so I
Oh, okay.
understand where you're coming from. Um, and yes, a lot of things tend to happen in these types of buildings. I think rewriting these bylaws, the rules, concentrating on like, okay, what has happened historically in our building with our residents and kind of playing it that way, and seeing if changes come about. But I think definitely talking to an attorney and
yeah.
it is difficult. It is difficult. HDFCs are um it is a difficult thing to deal with.
Right. Can I call you sometime, Liliana?
You can call the hotline, definitely. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, on that topic, I want to make sure that I put our hotline phone
Yes,
number
please.
into the chat because, yeah, we do these workshops in order to give information that everybody can use. But yeah, there may be, every client's case is going to be different. Every client's situation is going to be different. So our hotline is a resource for one-on-one conversations. It's Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, except days when court is closed. Like Thanksgiving is coming up. court will be closed, HCA will be closed, but the Friday after Thanksgiving, we're going to be open. Don't call us. No, just kidding. Um, yeah, so calling our hotline is definitely okay for both tenants and advocates and small landlords. And we, as non-lawyers, we answer many, many, many questions. And then when we don't know the answer to something or it's beyond what we should, then we'll try to figure out who could give you that right information. Yeah. Um, just were there any other questions about NYSCEF or eCourts? Um, if not, hopefully you all will get a chance to test out these websites, use them all the time. It with practice takes perfect. Oh, eCourts, that was the one with the court dates. It's also called Web Civil Local. Um, let's see, maybe I could try to put the
So when
uh,
you're trying to get access or information to your court dates, you will access eCourts. When you are trying to look up your case file, your case history, any notices that have been sent to you by the landlord, you will use NYSEF. NYSEF is to look up your case file. eCourts is to look up your court date.
I'm putting those in the chat again. Okay. So definitely bookmark those links. NYSEF is good for most civil cases.
Yes, I believe
Yeah,
so.
right. So yeah, Liliana, and I want to thank you so much for being here
Thank you, Sarah.
for the first in the series. Stay tuned for the rest of our series. There are going to be lots of great topics. Um, yeah, right.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Please visit all of our other series and workshops that we hold every other day. If you are at the courthouse in person, if you're in Manhattan, we do workshops in person every other Monday. So please
And
call
very
our
soon in Brooklyn
hotline.
too.
And very soon in Brooklyn as well. Hopefully all the boroughs. But yes, please give us a call, 212-962-4795. And we can give you more information on those workshops coming. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays. And we hope you join us again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.